What's up, y'all? My name is T. Shaw, and this is Brewin Black Podcast, where the contents we serve you is authentic, vulnerable, and relatable. That means we serve you with no cream and no sugar.
I guess I like my coffee black.
Hi, this is Scholar P, pronouns he, him, his.
And it's your boy T. Shaw, pronouns he, him, his.
And this is Brewin Black, your favorite topical podcast for those who like their subjects like we like our coffee. Black. T, how you feeling, man?
Bro, it's been a hell of a week. It's been a hell of a week to be black.
Jesus.
Man, we are under attack by white supremacists.
Yeah, man.
But Kendrick Lamar has shown out for the culture.
Ooh, he said, bitch, I'm attractive.
What?
Not fucking with you no more. I'm fasting. Wow. Wow.
Yeah. Like, real quick, like, what's your favorite song on it?
I like Rich Spirit and I think Mama I Sober.
I'm Sober, yeah.
Ooh, that was a deep one.
It's a deep cut, bro. It's a deep cut. For me, I think I would say Rich Spirit as well. Rich Spirit just goes. It's just a bopper. But I really like Purple Heart. That's the one with Summer Walker. That one's smooth.
What's the one where he's having the argument with the woman?
Oh, that one was artistic.
Yes, that was so good.
That felt like a film or like a play.
Yeah.
Shout out to, I think her name is Taylor Page. She was also in Zola, the Zola story. I really enjoyed it. Like, I don't know how much replay value it has, like, but I'll listen to it just as an art piece. Like,
oh, for sure.
The cadence, like them going back and forth, like it was artistic and it was the epitome of a toxic relationship.
Exactly.
And I really liked at the end, it was like the tap dancing's like stop tap dancing around the conversation.
Exactly.
But yeah, like I've been just kind of sitting with that and kind of thinking about it. I know the streets have mixed opinions on it. I know some people really like it. Some people think it's the worst thing that he's put out since. I think it's some of the rawest and most vulnerable things that he's put out.
For sure.
And I think I'm coming around to understanding that, like, things don't have to be for everybody, if that makes sense. Like, you're not always the audience for some things. Like, some people really hate it. And it's like, well, maybe this wasn't for you. Right. I think it's very introspective. It's very deep. I know one of the most controversial songs on there is Auntie Diaries. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a brilliant song, but I think some people were caught up on the fact that he used the F slur. I think that was the one thing that turned people off.
Yeah.
I think the other thing was that it's called dead naming, right? So when you use a trans person's old name and they were upset about him doing that, but I think in that is him telling the story that, like, oh, my auntie's a man now. And when he talks about his cousin, he uses his cousin Demetrius, but now he goes by Marianne now. So I think that, like, for us to get caught up on those little details, and don't get me wrong, a slur isn't a little detail, but I think when we get caught up on details like that, we miss the message of the story. And I think that is kind of like what I want us to draw back and try to understand what the message is. Yeah. And I was thinking about this, and I saw someone tweet about it, and it really made me think. They're from the LGBT community, and they said, like, y'all say this song is so impactful and so this and so that, but we see this song as being very harmful in the community because he's using the F slur and he's using dead naming these things. But I begin to think about it, and it's like, I think from the perspective Kendrick is telling it, he's telling it in a very raw perspective, but also, like, his understanding from being a child and saying these things and not really knowing and not really caring. And now at the end of the song, being a grown man where he's making amends with his cousin and how that transition of thought is. And I see that song as being very impactful for my students, right? Like, I work with young black men who do buy into transphobia, who do buy into homophobia, who do not care and use those words, right? So I think that for them, that word won't be a turnoff. So them being able to listen to the song and hear it all the way through. Like, a student told me, he was like, you heard this song? He was like, man, that's deep. And I was so glad that he had even asked me about it and the fact that he was even thinking about it. So in that, it's like, I don't want us to write off a whole project or individual songs because we don't like it personally for us and that we see it harmful, because something that I guess may be harmful to someone may be extremely impactful for somebody else. And, like, what's more harmful, the word within context or uprooting some of these larger, like, I guess, concepts that really like harm us, like homophobia and transphobia. Like, if we can get somebody to really grapple with that idea, I think we've done way more work.
Yeah,
So
I feel,
there's something I've been thinking about.
Yeah, no, it goes back to what you were saying. It's about the audience. Audience. It
Mhm.
might not be for that audience. First of all, no one person speaks for the whole LGBTQI plus
Yeah,
community.
yeah.
Then on top of it, that it's like if you're using the slurs, yeah, we might not like the use of the slurs, but there's a honesty and a ruthlessness
Absolutely.
in that true story.
Yeah.
And because we still have people in society who are using that, and that's a part of like how they think and how they talk, you have to hit those people. I think
Absolutely.
Kendrick was trying to hit those people. If
Absolutely.
you know about trans rights and transphobia and that's not the way you
Yeah,
on,
yeah.
I don't think this song was really for you.
At
You know
all,
what I'm saying?
at all.
But for the people who are still like, I'm about to go kill a trans woman that I've been messing around with because I'm ashamed, or like, you know, I say pause or no homo, and this,
Yeah.
that, and the third. I think that's who was meant to impact.
Absolutely.
Right. So I think that it's an important conversation. I think sometimes when it's not as ruthless and hurtful with the words and the story, it doesn't hit home as much because you can't relate.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. I think that that's what it is. It's so raw, it's so vulnerable, but that is what makes people relate because they understand themselves as Kendrick Lamar in that story.
yeah, exactly,
So.
exactly. So no, great. I think great album. I also think that I tried to have my expectations like medium, neutral, or lower because not being outside in the pandemic that can impact, like you're not having the same experiences that you were
with the song,
right?
yeah.
And mind you, they were probably making these albums 2020, 2019, so it's like a lot of stuff. Like
It
you
does
just
change things.
yeah, don't have the expectations too high. Just try to find a few joints on each of the albums that you like.
that you rock with.
Right, exactly.
Okay, but how you been?
Man, it's been a great weekend, a lot of celebrations.
Yeah.
Shout out to all the Black graduates at UCLA, at USC, at other schools across the state of California, and really all over the nation. You know, I got a pastor who just graduated with a PhD. Shout out to Vince Harrison.
Hey.
So many friends, babies, engagement, marriages, and graduation. So we just
graduation.
yeah. So it's that season. Did a lot of turn up. My body is still recovering. Do not try this at home. I'm a whole professional and I still get injured. So, but I'm trying to get back to it. But I got a wedding coming up in a few days. So, and it's not mine. It's not mine. Don't worry. It's not mine. I would tell y'all. But it's just been turn up season and trying to get back to working and stuff like that. So I'm feeling good, man.
Yeah. And on top of celebrations, I just want to say shout out to my cousin. He just graduated. Also, shout out to Gene. Phenomenal birthday
Come
party, bro.
on.
You was turned up, boy.
I saw that story. I
Man.
said, they wildin' over there.
Boy, summertime is upon us. So yeah, it was wonderful. So yeah, it is a season of celebration. And I think that that's the energy I want to bring into the show. I want to be able to celebrate Blackness today. Knowing that there has been a major tragedy that has happened to the Black community, but also I want to embrace ourselves and embrace our Blackness and find community within ourselves. And before we move on, let me do my land acknowledgement. So this is the land of the Gabrielino and the Tongva. This is stolen land, it's colonized land, and we will always pay those respects. And before we even move on too, we definitely want to acknowledge the victims of the Buffalo, the mass shooting, bro.
Yeah,
like
the massacre, the terrorist attack.
I want to say massacre. Yeah, terrorist attack, all of that, bro. So I guess what we can do is I'll read the first, you can read the second. We'll just bounce off like that, and then we'll give them a moment of silence. So Aaron Salter,
Ruth Whitfield,
Pearlie Young,
Catherine Massey,
Deacon Hayward Patterson,
Celestine Cheney,
Roberta A. Drury,
Margus D. Morrison,
Andre McNeil,
Geraldine Talley.
Ashe. So today's theme will be on critical race theory. Though we won't be focusing on what critical race theory is. Y'all can do a quick little Google search to figure out what critical race theory is. It's been in the news for the last 6 to 8 months.
Right.
It's often a hot topic. But rather than explaining to you what it is, we want to explain to you why it matters. And especially within this context of this Black tragedy, I think it is more important than ever. But two things I definitely think y'all should know about critical race theory is that one, race is a social construct. And what that means is race is not a biological thing. It is something that we've come up with ourselves. And it could have no meaning to it in another world, but not this world today. And the second is that racism is a part of everyday life. And that racism isn't just an individual bias and discrimination thing that we often think about. We often think about someone saying something and like, oh, you're a racist, and that's racism. No. Critical race theory also sees racism as something that is embedded in legal systems and policies. And if we can understand racism as an individual bias, then we can understand that there are individuals that hold these racist ideologies that work in law and that work in business and that have power, and that those feelings and those biases become rooted into our systems.
Mm-hmm.
So to understand why critical race theory matters, I think we first need to reflect on why race and how race shapes us and how we understand the world. So before we move on, I want to do something we call brain lotion. That's what I got this from Dr. Hunter. Shout out to Marcus Hunter at UCLA. He says, like, our brains are ashy, and before we hop into real conversations, we should lather them up. So I want you to finish this sentence. Black is.
I gotta go with the cliche thing, but I gotta say beautiful.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Black ain't.
Defeated.
Oh, okay. Okay. Now unpack them.
All right. So black is beautiful, and I gotta say that black is beautiful despite everything that we've been through. Like, we literally cannot be destroyed. And I think that's scary for white folks in particular, but for non-black people or things that are anti-black and people who are anti-black. Like, you don't understand. Like, we were born in oppression. We literally have the genes of oppressed people. And it's actual science. Like, oppression actually gets passed down, and the stress of the genes gets passed down. You know how much stress I have in my body right now from my ancestors? Do you know how successful I am? I'm gonna flex for a second. I can't be stopped. Even though everything around me says I'm not worthy, I can't be stopped. I don't just survive, I thrive. And that's what happens with black people. And I think our beauty is scary because you can't do any more to us than you've already done.
Oh.
We have already survived the worst that you can do.
Ooh.
You can't put someone through the institution of slavery, through the mass incarceration system, and a bunch of other atrocities.
Jim Crow, black codes.
And look at how successful and beautiful and just incredible we still are. We can't be destroyed. So that's black is beautiful.
Okay.
Black is not defeated for the exact same reason. Like, nothing you do, no massacre, no terrorist attack can destroy us. We can't be defeated. All we're gonna do is go stronger and go harder. This is literally in our DNA. We are used to oppression. And you know what? All the things that our ancestors went through, our Jim Crow ancestors, ancestors even from maybe like 40, 50 years ago, like it doesn't matter. Like, all of their resilience and their strength, it's in the current generation.
Absolutely.
We can't be defeated. And for some people, that is a scary thing. You can't. We're too smart. We're too resilient. So
we can't be crushed in that way. I
can't.
love that. For me, I would say black is abundant. Shout out to Kise Lamont. I am reading his book called Heavy. And that's just a concept that he talks about within the book. So I'm borrowing that from him. Shout out, bro. And then black ain't brittle. Black ain't brittle. So I'll go back to abundance real quick. When I think of abundance, I think of a plethora. I think of ample. I think of boundless, especially when you put black in front of that, right? Black abundance is that same thing you're talking about, right? It's like black joy. It's black hopefulness. It's that inability to be crushed, right? It's because we are so abundant, we can't be stopped. It is a force, and it is a life that just keeps giving, right? And it just keeps multiplying. It's like, we don't die, we multiply, nigga.
Right.
Like, and that's really what it comes down to. So when I think of black abundance, I just think of all that we have to offer and all of the fruits of our labor that we continue to bear, right? And then when I think of black ain't brittle, bro. Like, just like you said, like, we can't be broken. Like, we've been when I played football, they used to say bend but don't break.
Right.
And I think that that's what Black people are, right? It's like, yeah, you might push us to our brink, but like, just know because we're abundant, because we are beautiful, because we are strong, like, we coming back. And I was gonna say coming back with a vengeance, but the vengeance isn't like it's not a rage at anybody. It's just it's a survival thing. It's a thriving thing. It's like we are defying odds. The vengeance is against like these things that say we aren't.
Right.
It's not against a certain group of people by any means. Because if that was the case, like there would have been race riots from the minute we got out of slavery. You feel me? Like it'd have been us or them. It'd have been a race war to the end. So that's not what it is. It's fighting back against everything that says we aren't, and that's anti-Blackness. So let's talk about race. We're talking about being Black and what Black is and what Black ain't. But when was the first time you understood yourself to be Black? And not just saying like, oh, I'm a young Black boy, right? But like, when did you understand what Black actually meant in the world and in the United States?
Man, I feel like I grew up so colorblind because I had put like there are certain identities that came before others for me, right? Like I didn't really.
Which ones?
So I was like, I'm a child of God first.
Okay.
So I was like, you know, I'll see I'm a child of God first, and then race comes into it at some point, and then I'm a man, and da 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 da. So I think I sort of really noticed some distinct differences when I was like in middle school. You know what I'm saying? And crazy story. I remember this one horrible, big old racist white guy. He was in my 6th, 7th, and 8th grade classes. And he brought a paper. We had to do a project for history class. He brought it in a paper mache model of a Black man being lynched. And
oh wow,
yeah, and like,
and you from the South, so it makes sense.
Right. So it's just like, you know, and it was one of the first time, and like we had these desks that we all sit at for homeroom. You know what I'm saying? You had assigned seats. So it was me, him, and a Black girl. And so like he made this knowing that he was going to be sitting beside me and the Black girl that same morning, and he was so proud of it. You know what I'm saying? Thankfully, he got pissed on by some other Black kids in another class because they had to keep
literally.
Yeah, I got urinated on. So yeah, so you and your ancestors failed, buddy. Anyway, so I think that was one of the first moments where I was just like, oh, like this is distinct hate against me because of my Blackness. Like he just really hates me. Like I've never said anything to him too much. Like we weren't close like that, but like I was cordial, and it was just like, oh, he's excited about this. And this is a 13-year-old man. He doesn't even hang out with Black people, but he knows to hate them. So it's like, where does that come from? And so that was the first time I was just like, oh, like, I mean, I'm Black, you know, but like, oh, he hates Black people. And I guess, what does that mean? Because I think I grew up in a lot of times being like one of the only Black people or Black men in classes. And so I think that was a very distinct moment there where I was like, oh, okay. This is what anti-Blackness looks like. And this is sort of an attack on me, even though he doesn't hate me, I guess, verbally. So,
okay.
What about you?
And is that when you understood the world to feel the same way?
When did I think the world was feeling the same way? Jesus.
Because those are two different points, right?
Right. When I think about how the world felt, I think that it took me being in college. Because I didn't understand how the world thought, right? And once again, I was coming from like God first, race matters, but only after God's done what God does. And I was just so naive. And I think that when I took my courses, and then things started to make sense, and I was just like, oh, this shit is everywhere. And then you started hearing other people's stories. So like, not even going through a lot of super racist moments myself, but hearing the stories about all these other people who were doing it, and who were going through it, and I was like, oh, the world actually like hates us, and it's specific, it's intentional. I was like, oh man. So shout out to scholars like Eduardo Benilla Silva, Dr. Layla Brown, Dr. Dean Baker, like they changed my lives. Christina Villarreal, like it's like so many great scholars like changed that dynamic for me.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. On my end, I think mine also happened very early too, right? Like, well, thinking about my first experience of racism, I think it was it was definitely in middle school. It was a hodgepodge of things, but I didn't know what to name it, right? So I went to it was a predominantly white school. When we had moved to Vegas, we had lived in this suburb called Henderson. And Henderson is really, really white. So I had already known that like all of the black kids at my school live in my neighborhood. And I thought that was interesting. But it was cool to me because it's like, me and my niggas chilling. You feel me?
Right.
But even before that, they can't. More black students came my 7th grade year. But in 6th grade, I had went there and it was just a few of us. And we weren't really like super close at that time. But I do know I would hang out with like some of like my Latino friends and like my white friends, and they had money. Like we lived in like some townhouses and apartments, but they lived closer to the school and they walked to school while we got bused. And they lived in these nice ass houses, and they would like have BB gun fights and stuff like that. And they would invite me. And one time I finally went, and I thought the parents were just nice at first, but then I felt at some point that they were checking in on me too much. They kept coming in the room, like say everybody left, and I was just kind of chilling in the room. They would come in there and like, just like I would catch them like looking at me, and they would leave, and I'm like, this is weird. Like I remember feeling uncomfortable, and I was like, I think I'm gonna just go home a little early. And then I still didn't have names for these things, but like I would go to the stores with some of my friends and they would follow us around the store. And it's like, what the hell? Like I would catch them like looking at us down the aisle, and I'm like, well, it's just because there's a few of us that are black. And the one time that it was very distinct, we had a bus driver, and she was Latino. She didn't speak a lot of English, and she knew my name for some reason. She definitely knew my name, and anytime someone got in trouble on the bus, she blamed me. Anytime a black student got in trouble on the bus, it was only like 5 or 6 of us, she would blame me. She was like, it was Tristan. So I had gotten written up a number of times on the bus, and to the point that I got suspended. And I remember thinking it was so unfair because I kept telling the dean, it's like, I didn't do it. And this is where I learned like authority. Like I'm never going to be like even slightly honest with authority because I know that it doesn't provide me any benefit. So in the dean's office, the bus driver had wrote me up for throwing like French fries out the windows at other students or something. And they were like, well, did you do that? I was like, no, where would I got French fries at? Like, nigga, this ain't Mickey D's, boy. Like we was at school. Like y'all thought I was like, we didn't even have fries that day, one. But even if say we did, y'all thought I was gonna put fries in my backpack just to like save them all day and make my bag musty to throw them at students? And they were like, well, did you have food? And I was like, well, yeah, I had some pretzels, but like them pretzels was in my pocket. Like they was just in my hoodie pocket, and it was just something I had from lunch. And they were like, well, did you open the window? I was like, yeah, it was super hot because it's Vegas and like the AC's not that good on the bus. I was like, yeah. But I was like, I actually slept that day. I just opened the window and I just like kind of took a nap. But they was like, yep, that's enough information. You have food and you opened the window, so you clearly were throwing things out the window. And I got suspended off the bus. And they didn't believe me until during my suspension, she wrote me up again. And I wasn't even on the bus because I was suspended off the bus. And then that's when they apologized and stuff. And it was like,
oh, fuck you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was like, oh, like this is what happens to black people. Like,
right.
But I didn't even understand that this was a world thing because those were like very like minute like incidences. But then when I got to college, when I went to Boise State in Idaho, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Because at least when I lived in Henderson, like I lived in a black bubble within a white space. Like, so I was very black. Shit happened to us, but it was like it was like me and my community. So I was insulated from that as much because it was happening to all of us and we experienced it together and we was growing up. But when I went to Boise and I was by myself and I was the only black person and there was only one other black person and we found community with each other and they were like, oh, why y'all always got to hang out together? They would call me his name, call him my name. We didn't look nothing alike. He mixed, I'm black. Like, and no, he's still black, but like we look clearly different. I'm tall, he's short. There are so many different things. And that is when I just was bombarded by stereotypes and microaggressions. Can I touch your hair? And all of these things compiled. They just started lining up. I got caught the hard R so many times to the point where I almost tackled this little white girl. I like chased her down the hall, really almost speared her ass. And it was like, oh, like this is the world outside of like the world that I understand. Like, this isn't North Las Vegas. This isn't Vegas. And these kids in Henderson aren't even half as bad as these kids out here, because the kids in Henderson grew up around a decent amount of black people. They listen to rap music. They play basketball. So they think they understand blackness, and they accept it a little bit.
Right.
They accept the things that they want to.
The entertainment value.
Yeah, that they want to assimilate into themselves. But like, oh no, these was the honky tonk white folk. Like, these was cowboy boots. Like, we got KKK rallies an hour and a half away.
Every Friday.
Yeah. So that was, I think, the first time I really got to understand, like, oh, to be black in America. And that's also when Trayvon Martin had been killed. So it was a lot of Black Lives Matter had taken off. So there was a lot of things that really made me understand, like, oh, this world is shit. Like, I need protection, bro. Like,
yo, you know what? Actually, you made me think about a story. I remember we were playing outside, and my mom used to babysit this, well-off white woman, and I used to kick it with her and her brother at their parents' house. And one time we were going outside to play football, and like shit did get rough. But like, I remember one time the mom had me sign something, and what I didn't realize until now is like she assumed that my black mother was gonna try to sue her if anything happened to me.
oh wow.
Right. So it was like this assumption, like you work for us, but you're a poor black woman trying to get a come up.
Oh,
And
wow.
I it didn't really register into my head. Did I get hurt that day? Yeah, but I wasn't
Like,
in
you
my
were
mind.
injured.
Yeah, but it wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna try to, wet the floor and slip so I can.
Yeah.
And my mom wasn't thinking that. Like, she did, like, you know what I'm saying? So it was this, because you just, like, when you were talking, you made me think about that. I'm like, like, it's a real thing. People just, we never get that benefit of the doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you grow up with that and you recognize it, and then you're just like, oh. And then look at us now, super successful despite it, which is why we're beautiful and abundant. But it's still like, wow.
Yeah.
Ain't that some shit?
So why do you think identity matters? Because I have students that, like, they recognize themselves as black, but they don't identify. And they're like, well, if I go to college, I ain't going to hang out with all the black kids. I'm going to hang out with so-and-so. Because black people sometimes feel like they're just victims of things, right? And I was like, we've had some tough conversations. So I want to put it out. Like, why do you think identity matters? Why does it matter for you to identify as black?
You have to understand how the world perceives you. Now, of course, from a mental and emotional perspective, and I talked to my therapist about this, your self-narrative for yourself is the most important. But I'll be damned if I act like I'm a white boy or someone who is not black. Because the world treats you differently. Like, just like, a woman can walk down the street at night and think she's and I'm talking about not people who are actually trans, but an actual woman who's heterosexual and cis. She can think and say she's a heterosexual cis man, but if she walks down the street late at night with a bunch of men she doesn't know around, she can get attacked, she can get harmed, this, that, and the third. So it's not about how you perceive yourself, it's about how the world perceives you. So a better example is me. Like, if a cop pulls me over, I've been pulled over a couple of times, I don't be talking to him like I'm a white boy. I'll be like, fuck you, I'm driving how I'm driving, da-da-da-da, because I know they'll shoot my black ass. Like, period, right? So it's very important to know how the world perceives you, because there are different rules based on how the world perceives you. And if you don't understand that, early, you can be harmed, or you can start blaming yourself for stuff that actually isn't your fault. Right?
Preach.
Right? So it's just one of those things. Like, you have to understand how the world perceives you so that you can understand that, like, how you can navigate that and overcome it, because there are rules, and the rules are not the same for everybody. They're not equal. They're not equitable in any way, shape, or form. So you don't have to hang out with to your student, you don't have to hang out with all the black kids, but don't think that the white kids are going to treat you different, or the non-black people, and even sometimes black people. People are still going to have anti-blackness that's going to impact you.
Absolutely.
And as long as you understand that, hang out with whoever you want to, but at least know the rules of the game.
Yeah, be informed. And that's what double consciousness is, right? And it's like being able to understand yourself, like, and have your own self-narrative, but also be very cognizant of how the world views you and how you have to navigate that world. And that's kind of what you were talking about. It's like, you can't just get pulled over by a police officer and be like, yeah, nigga, shut the fuck up. Like, I'll pull the shit out when I want to. Like, hell no. Like, I have my registration in like mine is not in my glove compartment. Mine is in where people put their sunglasses like up. Cause you can't say I'm reaching for nothing.
Right.
And it's like anytime I've been pulled over, it's like I'm keeping my hands on the wheels. Like I know you asked for it, but like, am I allowed to grab it now? Right. And like, yeah, it could be a shot to some people's pride, but it's like my life is worth way more than any of that.
Right.
So it's like, but it's like knowing the rules of the game and how you can actually play it, because otherwise, like the game will play you. And I think that that's super important. And it's like that's why race still matters, even though it's a social construction. It's like money's a social construction. It's paper backed by rocks.
Right.
But you're not gonna say money's not important. Cash rule everything around me. Cream. Like
right. And once again, you gotta understand, you might look at a $20 bill and feel like it's worth a penny, but everybody else thinks it's worth a 20. You know?
Exactly.
Like come on. Like you gotta understand the value of things, and identity is super, super important. Absolutely. So as long as you understand that, do whatever you want to do. Just like you said, know the rules so you know how to play the game, or it will play your ass. So
last question about race before we move on to the next section. What is your favorite thing about being Black?
Whew. Man, it's the fact that people are so anti-Black, and yet our culture drives the world forward. Mm-hmm. And let me, because well, you know what? I was about to talk about different sections of Blackness and different types of Blackness, but that can be for another episode. But what I'll say is, and I'm speaking about like African American mm-hmm. Blackness in particular, mm-hmm. just so I'm clear. Our culture is stolen and used by so many different people across the world. They benefit off of it. They capitalize from it. They want to be a part of it, even though they're anti-Black. It's this thing of like, you love us so much that like, even if you hate us, it's either you hate us because you love us so much, or you hate us because you're that jealous.
Oh,
like, and I feel for you, because Blackness is not going to stop getting richer. Mm-hmm. We are going to get better and better and better. It's sort of like if you're in a crazy relationship, like you were saying before, the best revenge isn't to harm them, it's to glow up yourself mm-hmm. and to be like, oh, you could have had this, mm-hmm. and you just watching that ex just glow up and glow up and glow up. And that's how I think about Blackness. Mm-hmm. We're always gonna glow up. We're always gonna do good. You like, nothing can stop us. Mm-hmm. It's permanent. The growth is permanent. And I think that's what I take a lot of pride in terms of Blackness. And then with social media, and we'll probably get into this later, but like, Black people are more connected now than we ever have been. So we get to share these stories about racism, but also these stories about navigation and like the power that we have now is permanent. So I think that's my favorite part.
I love that. For me, I think I would say my favorite part about being Black is that it makes life worth living in a lot of ways. Like I think almost synonymous with Black is hope to me. It's like, because otherwise, what else do we have, right? Like, Black people have gotten the short end of the stick for so long. And I'm not even talking about African Americans. I'm talking about my niggas in Africa, my niggas in Haiti, my niggas in Jamaica, right? And it's like, no matter how much we fight, there's always resistance back. And there's always someone trying to colonize us, take our shit, enslave us, kill us. And it's like, we still take these tragedies and turn them into triumphs. And I think that that's what's beautiful. And it's like, and it's always rooted in hope. Like, hope is our engine. It's like it's our heart. Like, it just is always pumping. And it's like, if we don't have that, then we don't exist. And it's like, hope is always for a better tomorrow. And it's like for a better future. And I think that like Black people are in the world, are driving like the world into like, I don't know, like it's driving it into to progression, I guess. That's what I'm thinking. It's like, without like Martin Luther King, his dream, like that's hope, right? Like there are so many things that we're just fueled by hope. And I think that that's what I mean when it says like, when I say it gives us like a reason to live. Because it's like, well, shit, we just want to see it better. And it's not only for us too. And I think that that's the second part of it. And that's the second caveat, is about community. It's always outside of ourselves. We're hoping to create a better tomorrow for not only us, but the people around us and the people to come. It's like, I think the word is like cultural perpetuity. It's like, how can I make this place better for the people to come? And I think that that's what I love, is that oftentimes, like, in the face of tragedy, we are still thinking about other people.
Yeah,
So,
and it goes back to this idea of like every. I went to the grocery store multiple times this week since the shooting on Saturday, and I shouldn't be in a good mental place to do it. But it's like, oh, America, y'all are scared about people terrorizing you. I mean, terrorism is in my DNA. Like dealing with it and navigating it, it's in my DNA. I can't be stopped. Like nothing that anyone in this country fucking does is gonna stop me from living my life, because it's like I've already made peace with whatever. Like you can't stop me. Like even if you kill me, like I still live on.
Yeah.
And I think with Black people, everything that we do is worthy of celebration because we're constantly under attack. And there are certain groups of people where it's like, you can't even say that. That's why you look basic. That's why you look average, because your struggle isn't there. And that's why when we do shit, it's like not only were we successful, but it's in the face of anti-Blackness being something that's in the air in society. So it's just beautiful, man.
Yeah. And let's talk about it. So you talked about being at the grocery store and how you feel, and you feel I know I've seen a lot of people talking about they feel anxious, right? And yeah, like there was a tragedy in Buffalo. So I think we should just kind of dive into that. I know replacement theory is a big thing that is on the tip of everyone's tongue right now, because that was the motivation for the shooter to decimate those people in Buffalo. So I guess I want us to think about that, right? Like I want us to think about like how not only does that make us feel, but like what does this mean for us as a people, and what does it mean for the country? So I guess to start is like, what is a replacement theory?
So when we think about replacement theory, what we think about is this idea that white people are going to be replaced by the racially minoritized folks of the world, and specifically in America. And so if you're thinking about replacement theory, you're thinking about how can I make sure we keep white folks as the dominant race, as the ones in power, not only from a policy perspective, but literally numerically, you know? And so that is what was in Peyton's mind when he terrorized and massacred those people. And so it's so interesting to me, because it's like, if you're a white person and you feel like you're being replaced, like what does replacement mean to you? Because a lot of white people don't understand like what power and oppression is.
Preach.
And I think that the issue here is that a lot of these white people, they're not necessarily like a Trump or the rich white billionaires. Let's be specific. I'm from the South. I'm from North Carolina, where I go to flea markets, and like in 2021, like people walk around with equal rights for Southern rights. Equal rights for Southern white shirts. Like, and just walking around, they don't give a fuck. Like, that's where I'm from.
Damn.
So with that being said, I look at these white people, and if you think you're being replaced, it's not because of the minority next to you. It's because it's usually a class issue. There's usually someone in society who has made you feel like, I'm poor, I'm white, I have no space on this planet, and it's because of this racial minority next to me. They're taking the jobs, they're taking the schooling, and that's actually not the case. It's actually a much bigger ploy to put black folks, other racial minorities, and white folks, and poor whites. Let me be very specific. Poor whites against each other. If they can make you feel like your whiteness is the thing that you need to hold on to, and the only way you can move forward, you're gonna attack everything else that has to do with race, and you're not gonna try to attack the actual systems of power and capital and capitalism. We talk about that all the time. That's why Fred Hampton was so dangerous. He actually got poor whites to be like, oh no, like we're suffering too. And the way to heal ourselves from the suffering is actually to team up with people who look different than us, but actually have some of our same struggles. And I gotta say, this is why critical race theory, ethnic studies, all these intergroup dialogue, this is why we're pushing for it. Because I guarantee you, Peyton didn't grow up having those types of conversations in his household, right? And the horrible part about it, white folks, is that you might not care about racial minorities, but guess what? Peyton is someone's son. And guess what? Now his family has to deal with the fact that they have a boy, a cousin, a brother, whatever the hell he is to, whoever the hell he is it to, and you got to deal with the fact that you have a mass murder. So when white folks don't address this race stuff, your white boy is gonna get or white girl is gonna get some type of dialogue.
Mhm.
And if it's not intergroup dialogue, if it's not critical race theory, if it's not ethnic studies, it's gonna be the Klan. It's
Ooh.
gonna be the Klan waiting.
4chan.
The alt-right, and then your child is gonna turn into a terrorist, and then your ass is gonna have to visit them in jail, and they might fuck him up in jail.
Oh, absolutely.
And hey, and that's for another podcast. But those are some of my first initial thoughts.
Yeah, and I mean, you brought up a lot of great things too, and it's like that reminds me, and it should let everyone know that like this isn't new. This
Right.
isn't new at all. Like you can look up Red Summer. Like that is a summer where there were just a series of race riots, and I even hate the word race riots because you think that means that it's two-sided. No, it is white people going in and fucking black towns up, like really killing a bunch of black people. One example is in Chicago is because a young black boy swam across this imaginary line that they said, oh, black people can't cross into the white water, and that he tainted the water, and they stoned him to death. They stoned him to death. A young black kid, right? So these things are all rooted in the same things. It's rooted in white supremacy. And when it comes down to it, just like you said, it's like, what do you think? What do you mean? Like you're going to be replaced? Because I think that to me, like white people forget that they are the settlers. They are the colonizers, right? Like this land right here is Gabrielino and Tongva, boy.
Right.
Like you stole Blackfoot land. You stole Seminole land. You stole the Native American land. So what are you? All right, Siri, dang. I hear you.
Yeah, Siri with the fans. God, wow, that was crazy.
Siri White.
Oh, I can't wait
We
to
know
get
it
that clip
now.
out. I can't wait. God damn. All right, go ahead. I'm sorry.
But this is just all to say that, like, we have to really understand that, like, where are we starting this conversation? And that's why critical race theory matters. And that's why ethnic studies matters, right? Because then this replacement theory, it has no basis, right? Because y'all already attempted to replace the people that existed here first. Now, is that just white fear? Is that white guilt? Is that white paranoia? Is that what's settling in? Is that the same reason that they came up with black codes? Is that the same reason they came up with Jim Crow laws, slavery, right? It's a system of control. And I think white people are realizing as their numbers are dwindling, they have no control. And that's why it comes down to them trying to control abortion. Because abortion it affects black people and Latino people as much as it's going to affect white people too. They're trying to force poor white women to have kids because they don't want to be outnumbered at any point. And to me, that shows that is just fear and that is guilt from all past transgressions. They believe this conspiracy has convinced poor white people to believe that, like, oh, there's this elite group. And it often falls into anti-Semitism too, where they think it's these Jewish people that own media and the banks, and they're just like these like almost Illuminati figures, and they're trying to force immigrants into the country to outnumber white people. And it's like it's just so convoluted. But this isn't just in the United States; it's also in Europe as well. So I think that those are things that we have to really keep in mind, and like. That's why education really matters. And that's the real way that we can combat it. So when there are governors and state senators pushing to ban critical race theory and to ban cultural relevant learning and teachings, we know why. Like it's all tied into the same thing. And that's what white supremacy really is. It is trying to maintain and hold on to that power that they never should have had.
Right. And two things. You made some really great points. So like first, when we think about white people like replacing things, like it's almost like they've overtaken things, right? So first of all, this isn't their land. Second of all, so many black people have white DNA that we didn't ask for.
Man.
Right. So and you know that's also for another podcast. But in terms of just being overtaken, like you all have literally taken over the country. There's no way you could be replaced because your terrorism is permanent.
Yeah.
It's like you've actually tainted the DNA of America.
Of this land.
Like and like that can never go away. So like you literally don't have to worry about it because of the terrorism of your ancestors and y'all today. But there's also a sense, I had it. I might have to come back to it. But it's devastating. I lost it, man. I
Okay,
lost it.
okay. Well, also something that really made me something I just started thinking about too is that like the grocery store that was attacked in Buffalo. Let's even bring it back, right? So we're thinking about how racism isn't just individual acts, because some people might just say, "Oh boy, he's just a lone wolf," right? Like he's just he got radicalized on the internet, and we don't know how it happened, but that's not how white people are, and it's not a thing, right? But critical race theory teaches us to not only look at racism in individuals, but also racism in policies and in law, right? So let's think about this grocery store. This grocery store was the only grocery store in like these mile radiuses, right? And I think that that's something important because it's a food desert. It's a food desert because it's a black neighborhood. Like I work in food deserts. Like in South Central, like those are food deserts. You don't really see many grocery stores. But I come right here on Sepulveda, I see 3 Trader Joe's. Like when I lived over here in Westwood and West LA and near Culver City, there's Trader Joe's a dime a dozen. But when I moved to Inglewood, there's none over there. When I go to South Central, you damn near can't even find a food for less. And I think that that's important. You can't find a Rouse. So to understand that like these Krogers, because these are all Kroger brands, whether it's Albertsons or I don't know, Smith's, all of those like big restaurant chains, like they're owned by one thing and they choose to decide where they want to be. And it's like they weren't in that neighborhood. So Tops came into that neighborhood, and that's why it was a prime location to be attacked, because it is the only grocery store in that neighborhood that these people can go to. So like that to me is like racism on top of racism. It's like they created that as a target. And I think that those are things that we have to outroot, because it's like, even if someone never did attack it, the fact that that's the only option around is a problem. Racism doesn't always come in direct terrorism from people. It comes in from these McDonald's at every corner and these liquor stores at every corner, and not just in having lack of grocery stores and things like that. So that's something that also has just made me really think about it. It's like, this is a multi-layered problem if we're really going to look at it from a critical race theory lens.
Yeah. And I remember too, I was going to say another point in terms of white guilt and white fear and things of that nature. If you feel like you're actually being replaced by black people, I can damn near tell you what your demographics are, where you live, and how you grew up. I was in a place called Sedona. Shout out to Sedona, Arizona. Lovely place, beautiful mountains, all that stuff. I was talking to a waitress, and she says, what we have to do in this town for fun is tip cows. Tip cows and do scorpion hunting. Now, in a place where there's no black people, and you tip cows and you do scorpion hunting, if I'm an owner of one of the many establishments, whether it be tourism or restaurants and things like that, how invested do you think I am in you climbing up the educational financial ladder versus being a worker at one of my many establishments? And if I can keep you, and I will use any strategy to keep you down, and now you grow up thinking, oh my gosh, it's a black person's fault, it's a Latinx person's fault. It's like, no, the person that you're working for and the people who own these companies that you work for in your little small town, they're invested in making sure that you stay a worker. You know what I'm saying? And I think that it's a build up there. But I love the point you made about the food deserts, because if the food deserts didn't exist and it was a Kroger in that neighborhood, he would have been like, oh man, I don't want to hit the white people. You know what I'm saying? So now where do I go? But if our society was a place that where no food deserts exist, it would logistically make it tougher for someone who really wanted to target a particular group. Yeah, because a Kroger's could be owned by a black person. You could be supporting a black business, but everyone knows Kroger, so it's going to be a diverse population in there. And now Peyton's like, damn, I can't go and attack that. And so that example was great, because it's like, if you care about racism early on and you're very proactive about it, then these terrorist attacks are different. If people see this man doing all this stuff online, which since they do, it's not an isolated incident. It can't be, because it takes a community to ingratiate themselves with that mentality.
Absolutely.
Right? He had supporters when he's posting this stuff online. He had supporters if he posted this stuff online and it wasn't reported to the cops. You know what I'm saying? So it's about being proactive and seeing the racism in all of this. And that's where the intergroup dialogue and ethnic studies and the critical race theory, that's where it comes into play.
Absolutely. And as we're closing out, I just want us to be reminded that replacement theory is becoming a mainstream idea, but it's always kind of been mainstream, right? Like, I don't know if y'all have ever heard of, they call it white genocide, right? They say diversity is white genocide. And I think that these are ideas that we have to push back on. These are ideas that we have to combat on. And this is type of ideology that fuels like the Unite the Right rallies. And that's when they were in Charlottesville chanting, "You will not replace us. Jews will not replace us." It's the reason they put bans on abortions. It's the reason they stormed the Capitol, right? Because they're saying that, oh, we've lost power and Trump could not have lost because the people whose votes matter voted for him. That's what they were saying the whole time. They were saying the election was stolen from them by these illegal electorate, which are people of color. And it is becoming much more of a mainstream idea even within the Republican Party, and they're fueling this fire because they're saying that, oh, the Democrats are bringing in illegal immigrants and they're trying to give them amnesty and not prosecute them or send them back, and they're going to try to make them vote for the Democratic Party, and then we'll always be in the minority of a party. But it's like, bro, you got to be a citizen to vote. So they just going to bring in 5 million people and then be like, oh, yeah, you citizens now? Like, ask Tommy, who was just here, how hard it is to get some citizenship. He trying to get a visa, and what, he got a JD? Like, so again, it's not rooted in reality, but we need some type of education to be able to push back on it. And with Elon Musk owning Twitter, and opening it to free speech, I really think moving forward, I want us to think about, and the audience to think about, why it's important that we start to think about how we're regulating the internet. Because otherwise, these chat boards like 4chan, 8chan, Reddit allow for white supremacist ideas to thrive and to captivate more and more people. So as we're closing off, I just want us to think about like how the internet is pushing us toward a more extremist position, especially when it comes to white supremacy.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, man. It becomes, shout out to Pac, the hate you give, it will destroy everyone. Today it's black people, or Saturday it was black people. But it will destroy us all. It'll destroy us all. It'll destroy us all. That's what I want. That's one of the last things I want to say. Like, you can ignore the hate. You can say that these other things that are actually positive are trying to replace you. But you continue to listen to this replacement theory nonsense, it will destroy every single person in this country, rich, poor, black, white. It will destroy us all. So the choice is yours.
Choose wisely.
Choose wisely. So I think that's everything I want to say, bro. This is good, man.
It was a great show. Y'all, thank y'all for joining us. Please like and subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on Instagram. If y'all love the show, we have plenty of ways to support. We're going to be having some merch. If y'all like the hoodies, if y'all like the shirts, if y'all like the mugs, we got y'all. So stick with us and stay tuned. Keep the coffee black. All right, y'all. Peace, and we'll see y'all soon.